After helping to treat patients at ground zero of COVID-19, dozens of doctors are leaving China's Wuhan city. People who'd been holed up in their homes are once again heading out to malls, offices, and onto public transport.
I'm very excited because the city has been shut down for a long time. Even though Wuhan hasn't lifted all bans, we need to do something to revive ourselves. That's how I feel.
The lockdown here and similar restrictions in other parts of the country is expected to hit economic growth. But the manufacturing sector appears to have bounced back. Purchasing Managers Index, a key metric of industrial activity, rose to 52 in March from a record low of 35.7 the previous month. That signals a return to growth in the country's manufacturing sector. Analysts had expected a more muted reading of 45 this month, and the stronger showing has encouraged renewed interest in industrial stocks. But officials say the economic fallout of COVID-19 is far from over.
We're seeing uncertain factors, especially in international trade. Though the index for new export orders rose in March, the level was still relatively low. So now the effort is to promote openness, stability and security of the entire global supply chain.
Beijing is also helping other countries fight the pandemic by sharing expertise and equipment, including face masks, protective gear for health workers and testing kits. But some of those kits turned out to be faulty.
Regarding the tests, in this very particular case, they have been returned to the provider and a different test with guarantees are going to be supplied.
Although Chinese vendors are replacing the faulty equipment, sending the replacements will take time. Some analysts say this highlights the perils of skipping essential controls in manufacturing and testing and urge caution as businesses and governments try to get back to business as usual. Motheo Khoaripe, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Roderic Wye joins us now from London. He's an Associate Fellow at Chatham House's Asia Pacific programme and worked as a China analyst for the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Welcome to Money Talks, Roderic. Now, many people right now are looking for any bit of good news amid the doom and gloom surrounding this pandemic, and certainly global markets have welcomed this uptick in Chinese manufacturing. But just how promising is this data, do you think?
Well, I mean, first of all, it is good news and it is encouraging, no doubt, for markets. I think to believe that this means that China is suddenly going to rebound from the huge economic downturn of the last couple of months is over-optimistic at the moment. It is going to be a very difficult year for China, not just in terms of renewing manufacturing, but in renewing demand, both domestic and international. And I think it will take a lot more before we can be confident that China is sort of back on the rails again.
Now, as we heard in that story, China is slowly returning back to life after a 2-month lockdown designed to really contain this outbreak. But how important is it that China balances a return to normal economic activity against the possibility of new outbreaks as workers return to their factories and businesses across the country?
Well, this is going to be a real problem and challenge for the Chinese authorities. I mean, they are still being cautious about the level of lifting that they have seen, and that has been sort of on and off in terms of, say, cinemas, which were opened and then shut again, and these kind of things, because it is a very difficult but important balance to strike between resuming economic activity and preventing a further huge outbreak. And if China all comes back to work all at once, it is quite possible that there might be another outbreak.
We're also getting various reports that perhaps China grossly underreported the true amount of cases and deaths from this coronavirus outbreak, as some media outlets have cited the number of urns that have been delivered to various funeral homes vastly outnumbered the official death toll. Do you believe that China has done that, that they've underreported the true severity of this pandemic in the country?
I'm not an epidemiologist, but I have to say Chinese numbers are not entirely reliable, but then nobody's are entirely reliable. We're not necessarily counting the same things. We don't actually know, and neither do the Chinese know, how many people have been infected by coronavirus in the last few months, and indeed how many people are still infected. It is still a very open question, I think. At the moment, the Chinese Communist Party have staked a lot on the sort of victory that they are now declaring in Wuhan and elsewhere. And it would be a tremendous blow to their standing within China if another serious outbreak were to occur. So I think they will be relatively cautious about declaring about being too confident about what is happening.
And overall, how would you judge China's response to this outbreak that obviously originated in its country?
Well, I mean, the initial response was to cover it up and to sort of ignore it, but that is a response that may well have exacerbated the severity of the infection both in China and elsewhere. But once they had got going, they seem to have been very successful in Wuhan, and I hope they have been. I mean, one may well be skeptical about some of the numbers and some of the statements that the Chinese have made about getting this completely under control. But for the good of China and for the good of the world, one hopes that they are right.
Okay, Roderic Wye from Chatham House in London, thank you so much for your analysis.